You mentioned on the Apollo project the Surveyor Space Craft, and you told me a funny story. Maybe you could repeat that.
Oh, okay.
About this team that was looking at this one piece of equipment,
well, I'll tell you the story.
Tell us that again.
Okay, well, for Apollo 12, they picked a site where they already had 2 years earlier sent an unmanned a surveyor, which was sitting there on the moon's surface, and it had been exposed for 2 years to whatever you're exposed to on the surface of the moon. And they landed there, and I'd had an idea of there was a certain piece of glass in the camera which would have been exposed to cosmic rays from the sun for those 2 years, and if we handled it a certain way, we could learn something about these elements that had come from the sun and what their energy distribution was. So I very much wanted that piece of glass. And the astronauts, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting there listening to the radio. In those days, you could hear the astronauts talk. They went over to the surveyor, and they started messing around, and clearly something wasn't right. And one of them essentially said, "Oh, forget it." The other one said, "Well, let's do this." And they hit it with a hammer, and they got my pieces of glass. But I was sitting there in my living room saying, hey, don't forget it. That's my experiment. And it turned out what had happened was that the Jet Propulsion Lab, which had sent this Surveyor spacecraft up, had given for the astronauts' training what was supposed to be a duplicate of that Surveyor.
Like a mock or a...
well, it was a real thing,
yeah.
But they hadn't used it. So it was sitting there in Houston. The astronauts learned how to do the right things on that Surveyor. When they got to the moon, it wasn't the same.
Oh, dear.
They had sent something else. And so here they were, whatever tools they had wouldn't fit and things like that. The parts weren't put together the same way, so that's why one of them was saying, "Oh, forget it."
Well, you got your glass.
I got my glass.
And you had to watch that on television at home?
No, I listened to it. It wasn't, I couldn't see it.
You were listening?
I was just listening to the conversation.
The audio transmission of the astronauts?
Yes.
Well, that must have been exciting. That's great. You told me you spent time in a tent in your...